Thank you for joining us for part 2 of this episode. We will start with an opening song called Consecrating and Clearing, and then we'll just jump right in. And just as a quick reminder, in the last one, Tava was struggling with dealing with Ophan's energy. And so we took a brief hiatus from discussing Ophan for me to explain chakras and the way that our energy systems are set up and work so that she could have a little bit of time to regroup, and then we kind of re-entered some of the Ophan conversation. Are you doing okay?
Yeah, I'm just holy rootsing my heart chakra here with balance and silence
Okay.
for a little bit. Don't mind the gestures, sorry.
Let me know if you need help. We can stop this at any point. Your
Okay.
help, you're most important.
Okay.
I know lots of people talk about chakras, but there's sometimes I realize not a complete overall picture of how our whole energy systems work or kind of what they are and what they do. And so I thought I would just explain some of that. So we have three main parts that I'll talk about. We have a central channel or our core, that's something that's not necessarily always talked about with regards to the chakras. And I think sometimes he's kind of left out, I think, of a lot of energetic discussions as to how we work. A lot of people have also heard of our aura, which are the layers of our energy field that go out from our bodies. And most people have heard of the chakras. So I'm going to start with that central channel. And actually, you've heard me talk about this even in several podcasts. I've talked about, actually, in one of the last ones where we were talking about the place where Samael and Michael meet along our spine. So we have a central channel of light that is at the core of who we are. And it comes down from above our head, comes into the top of our head through what's often called the crown, and it moves down through our body just in front of our physical spine, down and through our perineum, and out and into the earth, and continues beyond us underneath. And this is the core of who we are. This central channel is there all the time. It's a part of our makeup and how we're designed, and how we're continually fed life force energy, that chi that you've heard, or ki, or prana, this life force energy, the thing that animates us and keeps us alive. So there's that central channel, and then the chakras are energy centers along the way. So that central channel is essentially made of divine light, and it's often whitish, goldish looking and it has some deeper undertones because it also connects down into the earth, and so it has some of those earth energies with it as well. Jonathan Goldman had described it as like starlight with this underlying deep bass note. So there's that light from the source of all creation, and then there's also this deep earth energy that's resonating within it too, because it's connecting the two things, and it's designed to allow us to have a continuous flow of insight and inspiration and information from the divine light sources and like universal sources, and then also to go down and connect into the physical earth and the energies of the earth, so that we are anchored here on the planet in our bodies, and that we can bring those kind of higher information sources through and manifest them on earth in our physical bodies. And so when everything is operating really healthy, we have that light that's going through everything. Now, if you think about our body almost kind of as a prism, so there's white light going in, and then it gets refracted into all these different colors. So you've seen with a prism where white light goes in one side and out the other side comes a rainbow. And it's a similar kind of thing. Throughout our central channel, there are different spots that originate in the center of that channel that have different frequencies, different vibrations, just like the differences in the colors on the rainbow. And you'll often see the chakra colors illustrated as having the same color spectrum as the rainbow. So starting from the bottom up, they are red, orange, yellow, and so on, with the crown chakra at the top being violet. And there are additional ones that are not directly connected to our physical body, but for right now, we'll just focus on the ones that are touching our body. So there's one right at the top of our head, which is called the crown, which is where the energy comes into our physical body. There's a third eye, which lots of people have heard of, it's like right inside the center of our head, like at our pineal gland inside our brain. And it lines up with that spot between your eyes. It's slightly above in between your physical eyes. Then there's one that's in the center of our throat. one that's in the center of our chest in alignment with our physical heart, like kind of in line with our physical heart, but in the center, like your sternum. And there's one that's right below your diaphragm and your sternum in the center there, that is your solar plexus. You keep going down, and there's one near the belly button area, a little bit below there, that's your sacral chakra. And then there's one that's centered there at your perineum, very low there in your pelvis, and that's your root chakra, and that governs basically everything from there down. And these different areas, they're like receivers and transformers of that energy. They emanate from the center of that channel and they go outwards. The one at the very top of your head is like a cone, and it actually faces up. So it's like a cone that's pointing up. It's like having a giant waffle cone there at the top that's recollecting all of the goodness that's coming down from above. The root chakra at the other end, which is down at the bottom at your perineum, is like taking that cone and pointing it downwards. So that's sending the energy then down into the earth so that we can be connected there. And it also helps to receive energy up from the earth. Your other chakras are going front to back. They have these vortexes, these cones of energy opening out to the front, and it's also opening out to the back. So the openings, the big wide part of the cone, is facing outwards away from you. And that's what happens then for the third eye and the throat and the heart and the solar plexus, the sacral chakras. All of those, the energy is facing to where it's moving more of a forward and backwards motion. So all of our chakras are designed just like our organs are, to be able to clean and restore and balance themselves and keep them really nice and healthy. Just like our organs are designed to replenish themselves and clean themselves and take care of themselves in an ideal situation. And the chakras create the energetic template, the foundation for our physical body. So it's not something that's necessarily overlaid onto our physical body, but it's actually the origin of the physical body. Everything that's within that chakra area, that's within our energy field, is actually coming from that energetic source to begin with. And so the organs that happen to physically be in that area correspond to the energies and the functions and what's happening with the chakra that's lined up with it. So the heart chakra is governing, the heart and the other organs that are in that area. Our sacral chakra is governing our reproductive organs and colon and intestines and things like that. So the health of the organs are closely related to the health of the chakra that governs it. So if that chakra is off, a lot of times you might have issues in those organs that could potentially manifest into something in the physical as well. So the other thing is that as those chakras spin forward and back and emanate from us, we also have layers of our energy bodies that are extending from our physical bodies, and each of those layers is also connected to the chakras that have energy moving through each of those layers. And depending on where it is in front or behind us or around us, like what chakra is related to that, also has to do with what kinds of information and experiences are held in the energy field in that area as well. And that's often called like our aura or our energy field or our energy body. And those are given labels like the physical level layer, which is within our physical body, the etheric, which is like right up against our body, the kind of like a second skin, the emotional body, and then further out the mental body, and then further out from that is the spiritual body. And so all of these things are all interrelated, and they're all working with each other, and they're all kind of literally on a spectrum, just like the spectrum of color. They're on like a spectrum along our central channel, and they're all working together. And so what we're going for, as Sam is always talking about, is a nice balance between everything. And there are times when one needs to take over and do more of a job than the other, because what it is that we're doing requires more focus and it requires more of that kind of energy. And then there are times when, that one's going to sort of calm down, and then another one's going to be a lot stronger because we need to be bringing through more of that kind of energy. But part of what our chakras do is that they help us to manifest things in this physical world. They help us to be able to organize and integrate and use the energy that we have, use that life force energy that's coming through, and work with it and be able to operate in the physical world, to do things, to talk to people, to express our creativity, to interact with each other. And the front and the back of us there's kind of a difference in the ways that the energies work or what they do. So the energy cone that goes out in front of you has to do with like manifestation, like what you're bringing into the world and how it is that you're moving. If we talk about like moving forward, literally it's the energy that is moving forward from us that's creating, that's manifesting, that's bringing all of this stuff into being. The energy that's behind us has to do with like potential for action. It supplies the fuel for the manifesting. And so if the chakras in the back part of us, if things are clogged up and held back there, it's like a slingshot. It's like taking this and it's pulling it way back, but it's not letting go, or it's like it's damming up the river of the natural flow of how it is that these things are meant to come through into the world and be there. Our energy body is a repository of all the things that have happened to us, that we've experienced, that we've done, that we've thought. All of that is held in our energy bodies. And if they are stored in a way that they're kind of locked away, like memories, certain things that have happened that we have not dealt with, that we've just sort of blocked away and we're not accessing that, it's like, I'm not going to talk about it, I'm not going to think about it, it's too much, I'm just going to stuff it away. That's stored in the back of the chakras that have to do with that kind of thing. So if it's maybe a family tribe kind of issue, it would probably be, kind of in the back or related to the root chakra. Or if it has to do with like a broken heart kind of thing, it would be like behind your heart chakra. Sexual trauma, that kind of thing would be behind your sacral chakra, the chakra that deals with our sexuality and creativity and things like that. And when that happens, when we have something that hasn't been processed and dealt with, and I use the term healed loosely, it acts as something that actually pulls back, holds back, dams up our life force energy so that things are not able to flow through. Then it holds back that potential and the fuel that we need for that chakra to operate in a healthy way in the world. And so that can manifest in lots of different ways, emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually. And so it's really important, when people talk about a lot of times like doing shadow work or working on these things in order to go forward, we need to be able to sort through those things that we've stored behind us and in the backs of those chakras in order to release the energy that is there and allow it to then flow through into the world in a healthy way. And so one of the things I had talked about was that in a conversation with someone recently who was asking about how these things work and talking about flowing energy to other people, is that a lot of people say they feel energy, like I feel energy moving, but I don't know what to do with it, or I feel the energy moving, and does that mean that I have Reiki or that I can use that the way that people use Reiki? And this is a whole big topic of stuff that's way too much to get into right here. But overall, the idea is that you're likely to be able to feel the energy moving through your body, which is a good thing. And the more you can feel your energy moving and feel into the sensations of that, the more you're able to be aware of what areas, the energy seems to be more stagnant and what areas that it tends to be a lot more open. And all of us tend to have certain chakra that we've really sort of locked down that don't have a lot of energy flowing through them. When they're naturally flowing in a healthy way, they're spiraling or like vortexing and circling in a clockwise manner. If you're looking at someone from the front, you're looking at their body from the front, it's clockwise that direction, because it's hard when we're talking about our own physical bodies as to which direction clockwise would be. And then our energy can actually sometimes go the other direction or be really shut down or just really stagnant. So when a chakra is really open, that's when you're probably most likely to be feeling energy moving. And a lot of times people who have really open hearts tend to feel that. It's like their heart feels like it's just gigantic, and they can feel all of that energy there, which is a really open heart chakra. That energy is something that's transferred to others. If you're hugging someone and your heart chakra is super open and you're so filled with love for them, and you just give them a big hug, they're going to feel that. You are transferring that energy to them. The key is that we want to make sure that we're aware of the energy that's flowing through our bodies and what's happening, and helping to have things be as balanced as possible. And that if we're sharing energy with others, we're really intentionally doing a lot of giving energy, that we're not giving of our energy, but that we have a nice flow of energy through that central channel where we're really grounded and connected below, and we have that lovely continuous flow that's coming in. And it does actually, energy comes up from the earth into us, and it comes down through our central channel that way into us, and it sort of mixes and blends around in our heart chakra and permeates. But ideally, you want your intention to be that you're drawing in, like if you're giving energy to someone, you want to be focusing on the idea that you're drawing in extra life force energy or extra earth energy, and you're flowing it to them, as opposed to feeling, oh, my heart feels really, really open and really strong, and just giving that, because we don't want to deplete our own energy. Right. And the energy that we're flowing through is going to be less tied into all of our energies and our personal things that are going on. But when we're talking about something like Reiki, you're not giving your energy at all. You're entirely connected to like another light frequency band that's coming in through your crown chakra, and then you're directing it out through your hands or your eyes or your feet or your breath or wherever you're intending it to flow. But when you're doing something like Reiki, you're connected then to an additional vibration, and you're very, very intentionally stepping back and allowing that to be the thing that comes through, so that you're not drained. And that specific line of vibration also has a spiritual guidance component to it as well, which is really helpful. I'm hoping that this was helpful, at least to just get an idea of what happens in our body. This could be like an entire podcast in itself that could go on for years and never touch on all of
Yes.
the things.
And I think I'm actually going to step back real quick. Samael has advised that I grab Matilda, who has a lot of my energy in her, just to kind of
Oh,
regulate
that's
myself. I'll be
smart.
right back.
Good job, Samael. I wish I
Yeah.
thought of that. I'm like,
Well,
oh, why didn't I think of Matilda?
well, he said something briefly. He said to go back to the Ophan energy that was coming through. He said the singer is more able to handle her energy, Umshala, as she has long been exposed to it in the sword, and she naturally vibrates at a higher frequency. You do not have regular experience with it, and so feel turned inside out. So,
Gotcha.
it appears there was a brief oversight on the side of the angel about the fact that I probably need to buckle up. before Ophan came in. One of the points that you were making the other day that I loved, and I would love for you to speak to if you don't mind, is oh, by the way, for those of you who can't see what I'm doing and listening, Matilda is a puppet that travels everywhere with me, and I made her, and she is basically just a big old chunk of my energy. So I am holding her right now as we are recording to sort of get my body back to its normal energy. The left side of my body is going bonkers. Everything from my eye to I'm itchy all up and down my left arm. Everything's just everything's gone left. But what you were saying the other day, for people who often are starting to do energy work, first off, there's lots of different types of energy, not just Reiki. And so sometimes people don't realize that. But the second thing is that a lot of these energetic changes are a lot more subtle than you think. I see practitioners a lot of times in classes who when a guide comes in or when there's energy shifting, they expect it to feel sort of like what I'm experiencing right now, where parts of me are on fire or aren't functioning or are, they expect that it's big. And it's not always big. You just kind of have to tune yourself to the subtlety of energy moving through you. So a lot of times, if you are sitting and you're focused on, oh, can I feel something moving here? And you notice that you have an inclination to move a certain way or do something with your breath or sing or whatever it is. Follow that inclination. A lot of times we go, oh, that's probably nothing. No, no, you're tuned in. That's something. And Jen, would you mind elaborating on that a bit more? Because you did a much better job of it the other day when we were talking than I have done here.
Oh, no, you're doing great. Yeah, so I was having a conversation and I realized that when I talk about my experiences with a guide and with Michael or with other beings that come in, and I'll say, Michael told me to do this, or I heard something, or whatever, I realized that it sounds like a much more clear, defined, obvious kind of experience than it really is. And I think especially because, with Tava, it is very clear. She sees Samael, hears him talking, and it's more clear and defined because it's in words. When
Yeah, I'm the
I'm
big weirdo, folks. Do not use me as a guide for what should be going on.
It is what she experiences is, I would say, really rare. Like, that is not the way that the majority of guides interact or the way that the majority of people receive and experience their guides. So if you're hearing us go through this all the time and thinking that's what it should look like for me, so if it doesn't look that way, I'm not getting anything. We really wanted to clarify. And I realized it's really just a simplification, like a way to be able to communicate, because otherwise, if I didn't say, this is what Michael said to do, it would take me about 20 sentences to say that one, communicate that one thing. But it's really more of a knowing and like this deep inner sense of, oh, that's what I'm supposed to do. So I hear him as that ringing in my ears. So, that we've talked about the ringing of the sword. I'll hear that. So I'll know he's really present or really close when I hear. The louder it gets, I'm guessing it's the closer that he is, or the more excited or intense his energy is about, like, you need to be paying attention to this. Like, as I'm saying that, it's getting louder and louder. But I don't necessarily hear words from him 99% of the time. But when I am connecting and intentionally paying attention to him, or I'm asking him a question, or I'm asking for guidance, I more just get this sense of knowing of, I think I'm supposed to do this. And when I think about it, it's really a very subtle subtle shift in vibration. And what I've come to learn is that when we're trying to listen to guides and we're trying to get a sense of who is here and what it is, we're often looking for something big. We're expecting to hear words, we're expecting to see something really clearly. And it's typically not like that. It's really more about learning to feel into the tiny little subtleties in frequency shift. And it can be anything from a subtle shift in temperature to it feels literally like it's as thin as a hair. The difference between like not receiving something and going, oh, I think that's it. It's like being in a store. I don't know if you've ever sort of just turned yourself over in a store and been like, I'm just going to see, I don't know why I'm here, but I feel like I was supposed to go in here. And then you just kind of find yourself over in a spot or going, I don't know, some part of me I just felt like I wanted to go over and I was supposed to stand in front of that bookcase. And then you happen to look up and you're like, oh my gosh, that book is exactly the message that I've been looking for. You know, this has exactly the information or the answer to the question that I'd asked. Or just this tiny little impulse to pick up this book instead of that one, or to look out the window at a certain time, or a thought that just pops into your mind. It's something really, really subtle. And part of the key of that is that we don't want to be hyper vigilant, you know, walking around with like okay, what is it, where is it? But when our guides are communicating or trying to get us to become aware of something, the same thing will maybe show up multiple times in a row, and you think, you know, what are the odds that my attention's been drawn to a panda 3 times in the last 24 hours? You know, it was on a TV show, it was on a bumper sticker, it was on a thing, and you start thinking, okay, there may be something here.
Like, one of the things that I tell people is sometimes they'll contact me for a bone reading, and the bone reading will say that there's a guide waiting for an invitation to come in. And people will say, well, how do I know which guide? And I'll say, you need to go out and walk in the world, and they're going to make themselves known. And one of the ways that they often do that is through the voices of other people in your environment,
Yes.
where you'll be sitting having dinner with somebody and somebody will say the name of an entity. And then the next day, another person that doesn't know the first person or that doesn't communicate with them also says that name. And then the next thing you know, somebody gifts you something that has to do with that entity. And you're like, okay, here it comes. I did a bone reading for someone once, and it said this same thing, that there was a guide waiting to come in. And I was sitting there with one of my yes, no, with my little cowrie shells for yes, no. And I was literally throwing out entity names that I thought it might be. And I kept getting no, 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 no. And then finally I got one that said yes. And I looked up at the person I was reading for and said, have you ever heard of this entity? And they looked at me like someone had slapped them and said, my mother came by this morning with a statue of that goddess and gifted it to me. And I'd never heard of them before. And I just stuck it on the coffee table. So here was a mother delivering a statue going, I thought you might like this. The person went, I don't know who this is, and stuck it on the table. And now, less than 24 hours later, I'm giving them that name again. Like, hello, the guide is trying to make themselves known. I didn't know their mother. I didn't know about this gift. And here we have the exact same name showing up in one day. When the Morgan first showed up, I got lost and I ended up in Morgantown. And it was Morgan everywhere. And I went into a metaphysical shop and there was a huge statue of the Morgan on the front table. And when I went back to that shop like a couple days later and was like, oh, you sold the statue, they were like, we don't know what you're talking about. There was never a statue of the Morgan there. Right. So I was having multiple where I get lost and show up in one town that has the same root as that name, and then a questionable experience in a shop that had lots of entities referred to it. So look for these subtle things. I know Jen said it before in a previous podcast, and I think we've repeated it a few times, that the biggest impediment to your being sort of hooked into energy work or magic is the doubt, right? So if you go, maybe I didn't hear that, and you automatically write it off, you are less likely to hear the next two or three times that it comes in, right? But a lot of times these things are subtle. You're listening for it in song lyrics, you're seeing it on license plates, you're hearing the name in casual conversation around you. But when you sit down and you just start observing and noticing these things, if you have the impulse and the impulse isn't something dangerous, follow the impulse, even if it seems a little bit wacky. And what you start to find over time is that you start to be able to distinguish the energy of a message from just, oh, yeah, I want to eat that Kit Kat bar while I'm in the aisle at Target. Like you'll start to be able to tell the difference between just sort of a craving or an impulse that's in the here and now and ones that are coming from someplace else. But if you never trust those impulses and follow them and see what the result is, you never find out what the message might have been. And you'll finally get to a point where you're like, I am clearly being hit over the head with this. But if you didn't trust those first couple and just go with it, you don't arrive in that place where you can start to tell the difference.
Yeah, and that was one of the big things that I was emphasizing in this conversation the other day was that is the following through, that we really have to follow through with those tiny little inclinations that we get. Again, as long as they're, it's not dangerous and we're not talking about, I got this tiny inclination to quit my job, I'm just going to quit my job. We're talking about like, I just feel like maybe I'm supposed to go over there, or maybe I'm supposed to stop into that store, or I just got the sense of thinking of somebody, I think I'm going to call them, or those kinds of things, because something that it's not going to dramatically change your life in an instant, that could be a good or bad thing, depending on how we interpret it in that moment. The little things, those little impulses that lead us in one direction versus another, every time we act on it. So, just assume, like, just play with it. Just pretend for a while. Pretend like you're hearing your guides, and pretend like they're sending you these very tiny little impulses, and you're playing a game and you're just trying to see what it is that they're leading you towards. So just that little impulse to do this, that, or the other, or in a certain direction, follow it. And what happens is when they're sending you this message, they're getting you to go do that, and you do it, they're like, yes, yes, okay, give her another one, give her another one. Like, she's getting it, she's getting it. And with each little step, you build confidence, because usually when you start following through on these, there's some kind of validation for doing it. And it may be that you need that, the first impulse was, I think I'm just going to get out of the house and go somewhere. And then the next impulse was, I think I'm going to just drive this direction. And then the next one is, oh, I've never even noticed that store before, I think I'm going to go in there. But at the end of these little series of impulses, you're likely to end up standing in front of a person, or having a conversation, or seeing something, or hearing something that you just have this feeling, I know this was for me. And sometimes you're overhearing a conversation of somebody in a restaurant behind you that suddenly says something, and it just lights up. One of the ways that I feel like we kind of can get a sense of this was for me is, you may have heard the same song 100 times, but then all of a sudden a line stands out to you and feels like it has meaning. You may have driven down the same road past the same billboards and the same signs a million times, but all of a sudden your attention is drawn to like one line or one image on a billboard. And there's this resonance within you where you'll feel this sense of, I think that was for me. It's like it taps into something within you that just kind of lights up. And
Right.
when you feel that, if you can listen to that and honor it, it builds that. It's kind of like building a muscle memory. You're developing new neural pathways. And every time you do that thing and you get a hit from it and you honor it and go, I know I could explain this away in a billion different ways, and there are a million different people I could tell that would tell me I was crazy, but I'm going to ignore it and I'm going to say, thank you. I'm getting it and I'm going to pay attention. Every time it starts feeling stronger. You get more and more and more, and you start picking up on more and more, and your confidence in that grows. And then every time you've had those situations where you've had the validation of, oh my gosh, this is why I came here. I just had exactly the conversation with exactly the person that I needed to. Really, really build that into your brain. It's called highlighting. Highlight that moment for yourself and go, this started with this tiny little inkling that I just felt like maybe I would go to the store now, or maybe I would get out of the house, or maybe I would walk over here. And really highlight all of those tiny little things that led you to that, so that your brain goes, okay, this is something we pay attention to. And you start recognizing that feeling of resonance within you, that feeling of that little bit of, oh, that happens when you notice.
Right.
And then it starts feeling bigger. And what I realized that I was saying is that I'll say, Michael told me to do this, or I knew that was what he meant, or whatever. It's not that the messages are necessarily even any louder than that, but that I have tuned my energy and perception to be so aware of the tiny little subtleties that it seems like a much bigger thing now to me.
Right.
So, it's not that I'm getting, he's shouting at me and waving, going over here, do this, which he might be, but I'm still picking up as like I think I might, well, I think maybe
Yep.
I'll go over there.
Exactly.
But to me, it feels so much bigger now because I know I've built the confidence and the strength and the fine tuning. It's really a fine tuning of ourselves, of learning to pay attention to the tiniest little things. And the
Right.
more you do that, again, just setting your awareness, just setting, even just for the day, you could say, okay, today I'm going to be aware. And you can just speak out loud to your guides, whatever divine guides are here in my highest good that are trying to help me along my soul's path. I just want you to know I'm listening and I'm paying attention.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
beyond that, don't go through your day with your eyes super wide looking, oh, is that a sign? Wait, is that a sign? Is that a sign? Just sort of let it go from that point, but you've told yourself and you've told them, I'm aware and I'm listening. And that's really all it takes. And then just go through your day and the things will naturally stand out to you. Or you can ask a question to them at the
Yeah.
beginning of the day and say, I really need guidance on, try to stay away from yes, no. But just, I really would love guidance on my career path or my, this decision that's weighing on me.
Yeah.
And then just let it go and see how it comes to you.
Love to go back to you. So this is something that I see people do that sort of help, and they end up getting in their own way. Is you talked about, you said, pretend your guides are talking to you. A lot of people go, oh, but what if I'm making this up in my own head? Okay. You know what? Here's the thing. If you shut yourself down saying, I'm not going to trust what's happening in my own head, then you're not going to get messages. But if you think about what do they tell you in career? They say to dress for the job that you want, to act like you already have that job if you want to advance. And there's an important point in that. When you already put yourself in the energetic space of, I've arrived, I've achieved it, I know what I'm doing, your whole energy about how you relate to your work changes. If you put yourself in the space of, my guides are talking to me. And when that little voice in your head goes, oh, but maybe you're making it up, just say back to that voice, so what? I'm dressing for the job I want right now. I'm opening myself up. I'm putting the possibility out there that messages are coming through because that is the first step in allowing them to come through. If you keep saying, I don't hear anything, I don't hear anything, they're standing around you like the odds of Michael showing up on your front lawn with a large sign on a stick pretty low. But if you get used to listening to where these guides are and what they send you, pretty soon it comes across like him with a sign on a stick. I'm going to give you an example. Jen and Keith and my husband and I were having lunch in one of our favorite restaurants a couple months ago. And the restaurant serves coffee. We could absolutely just sit there in the booth and have coffee. Every time we've had lunch before, we meet in the restaurant and then we go our separate ways. But on this day, all of a sudden, Keith looks at us around the table and goes, do you guys want to go get coffee somewhere else? And we were like, why? Like we're here in the table where we always are. If we ask for coffee, they will bring it to us. Why would we go somewhere else? And he's like, I think we need to go down the street and we need to go get coffee at this coffee shop that we all love. And I remember sitting there thinking, Keith, like they could literally just bring coffee to the table. Why? But I could tell he now had this like different energy about him. Like he was fired up that we needed to go down the street. So we all went, okay. My husband and I got in our car. Jen and Keith got in theirs. We drive, what, like 2 blocks or 3 blocks and pull into this coffee shop. And as my husband and I get out of our car, we're waiting on the sidewalk for Jen and Keith to find parking. And as we're standing there, this woman gets out of her truck right next to our car. She's covered in pagan tattoos. And she turns around and she's wearing like a t-shirt that says something about a witch on it. Now, I could have gone, random pagan, right? But it's weird to see in the place that we live people who sort of have their paganism on display. She's directly next to our car. And when she got out of the car, I had this overwhelming urge that I was supposed to talk to her. And of course, I'm thinking, I think Keith was picking up on the fact that I needed to get my butt down there because Jen and I are supposed to meet her. And so this woman gets out of her truck. And of course, the part of my brain that goes, what are you going to say to the stranger? She's going to think you're weird if you just talk to her. I'm like, well, she's literally wearing signs all over her body on in her tattoos and her t-shirt that say, I'm not going to think this is odd because she's literally labeled witch, right? And I'm standing 4 feet from her. And so I said, hi, I like your shirt. Um, I have some like it. And her whole face lights up, and it started this whole conversation. And then Jen comes over, and we continue the conversation. And it turns out she's opening an art gallery in the next town over. And she was looking for community, and I was looking for more places to put my books. And now I have a friend. But the only way I met the friend and the business associate was because Keith suddenly went, we're not supposed to be sitting here right now. We're supposed to be 3 blocks down. And we listened to him. He could have just sat there and said, I'll ask the waitress for a cup of Joe. But instead, he went, come on, let's go. Everybody, let's go. And him listening to that put us in the path of someone who has been very beneficial, has created spaces for me to teach in and for people to gather in. who might not otherwise have met each other. So that opened a whole door forward. But again, it took Keith going, let's go, and us all going, we know to listen when he gets that motivation. We know to follow that. And because there wasn't all of the questioning, uh, what if we're just making this up? We were able to see that the result was obviously something of a magnitude, that it was changing the way I can reach into community. And I was able to network her with some other people who she's now gotten to be really close friends with, and they're doing work together. So it's those little, it can be as simple as, where am I having that next cup of coffee? And then when I get there, just sit and watch and listen and see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that. Another story that came to me when we were talking too about, you happen to be somewhere and a stranger just happens to mention the name of a deity. And it's interesting. I know somebody else was talking about that one of the ways that they found out about one of their big guides was that their parent, who was totally not into any of this kind of stuff, happened to be walking through, and I think it was a thrift store, saw this statue and was like, oh, that's the sort of thing she would like, but was not even supportive of those kinds of things, brought it and gave it to her, not having any idea who it was, but it was like, oh, that's the sort of thing that she might like. And
Right.
ended up connecting her. That was like the big final sign of, oh my gosh, yes, this is Saraswati is connecting with me. And
Yes.
it's
Yes.
interesting because a lot of times the people delivering the messages don't have any idea that they're delivering a message. It's not something where they're necessarily coming up and saying, like, that they consciously know that they are here to deliver. And sometimes you do. I've had people like walk up to me in the grocery store and go, I have a message that I'm supposed to give you.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay.
Yep. Yep.
But a lot of times they don't know, and I think it's just that much more delicious when that happens. So I was in Ireland with Keith, oh my goodness, like 20 years ago maybe. And really, I was, I guess I'd maybe sort of read maybe the Celestine prophecy I'd read or something, but I was not really into any of this. And I had this, we were walking along the cliffs of Moher, and I'd had this whole major spiritual experience that had to do with the mountain goats on the side of the mountain, and how they were,
Yes.
just like fear. Here I was on a path that was maybe a foot and a half wide, terrified that I was going to fall and clutching to the edge. And meanwhile, there are these goats that are jumping and playing, and they're barely standing on anything on this sheer cliff. And they have all the faith in the world that they're going to be fine and they're going to be held up. And I had this whole big spiritual experience there. And after that, I just kept thinking, I just want something from the goats. I want like a piece of goat hair or something that I can, to help me how kind of hold on to that energy. And I had been looking and looking and walking of just like, what could I have of the mountain goats? Like, what sort of thing could I take with me that would connect me with the energy of that? And I didn't even know about all of these energy things at the time, but somehow I knew I needed this. And we ended up taking this guided tour, walking tour of the Burren. And it was from this guide who I'd actually recognized from a travel show that we had watched. Like, he had actually was the guide on it. And so he's walking, but it turned out he was horribly misogynistic. He did nothing but put women down, do things. It was awful. And it was just the Keith and I and this guy. And I was like, oh my gosh, this guy is just insufferable. I mean, he did nothing but come up with ways of like trying to insult me, and
Ugh.
just women in general, and talking about how women were so awful. I mean, it was awful. And the me of now would not have tolerated that. The me of then was just like, oh, he's awful. I'm going to ignore him and try to enjoy this walk.
Right.
And we're going along, and he had done this whole thing with like an herb of like, oh, this is a native herb that they use. And it was like, here, chew it up. And so I put it in my mouth and chewed it up, and instantly all of the spit from my mouth completely left. And it was like the worst cotton mouth I've ever had. Couldn't hardly even swallow. And he starts laughing, and he was like, and that's how they'd shut the women up. And I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe that you just did this. He's like, yeah, it like sucks all the water out of your mouth and whatever. And then we had like however long to keep hiking like that. So by
Oh
this
my,
point, I'm like, okay, you're like, what has happened to
you're a
you? Like,
monster. Take us
what
back. And
is wrong
who's
with
your
like, yeah,
supervisor?
I just kept thinking, what has happened to you that has made you this jaded? But I was determined. I was like, I'm not going to let you ruin this for me. I'm just going to walk around. So I'm hanging back and just walking and looking around and enjoying. And the next thing you know, he makes some other joke about like women and their hair extensions and their hair and whatever. And he was like, here, you want a hair extension? And he picks up, he had seen this big mass of the mountain goat hair and hands it to me. And he thought he was insulting me and being clever, and he handed it to me, and I was so happy and so excited, and I was laughing to myself the whole rest of the hike going, here, like, what an amazing way that spirit
Yes.
found to deliver this thing from me. You know, this answer to my prayers came through the hands of this horribly misogynistic,
Total
insulting,
jerk.
awful
Yeah.
man. So I've remembered that ever since, that it's like, even from somebody who is trying to insult you, may still end up delivering this amazing gift and gem of an answer. The answer to your prayers of the what am I going to do, it could still come from anywhere. And so I've remembered that
Oh
ever
my
since then. I
God,
was
that
like, I
story.
was so happy. I was like, ha, you are such a I was like, you thought that you were insulting me, and you just gave me the greatest gift you could
And I'm
possibly have
holding
given
it.
me.
I'm keeping
I
this.
did,
Yeah.
and I still have it I have it right in the closet, right in there.
Oh my God.
And it was stinky. It smelled so strong. Mountain goat, like all the stench it was so strong, but I was like, I don't care. I'm bringing this back.
Oh, heck yeah. Perfect. That's an
Yeah.
awesome story.
And I realized one of the things I wanted to follow that up for anybody who's like, why did her husband not say something? Why didn't he do something? I was determined. It was obvious from the beginning that he really wanted to get a rise out of me. Like he
Uh,
wanted to have that whole thing, and I refused to pick up the rope. It was like,
yeah.
I'm not going to let this ruin, this hike in this beautiful place. And Keith would look at me, and I'm like, it was like, it's just not worth it. Like,
Yeah.
just don't
Yeah.
give him, we're just not going to pick up the rope and let him have any sort of power over us. It was like, you know what? We're just not giving it the time of day, and just, and just sort of moving on. So I was like, no, it's just not worth it.
And then he delivered you your goat hair. That's an
Mm-hmm.
awesome story. That is so cool. Yeah, the things that just get delivered to you. I mean, that's one of the things where every now and then I'll just say, all right, I'm looking for X. And some form of it arrives. And it might not be exactly what I thought I wanted, but in the long run, it ends up being the probably the better option, or being what needed to happen there. So,
Yeah, and the
yeah,
putting it out there, like that's really important. It's such a simple there's such a simple shift between I really just knowing I just want this, or I want to have help, and just that little shift of just kind of saying to the universe, either out loud or to yourself, I'm asking for help. And, because we
yes.
do have free will, and we do have, and a lot of times, like even Samael, we were in a conversation, we were talking about setting up a circle and having Michael and Tava in there with me and all this stuff. And he was like, am I allowed in? And I'm like, of course you are. Like, I just assume, I'm like, of course you're going to be in there with us too. But, they do really respect our boundaries and our free will. And if we're not asking for the help, if we're not saying, hey, I'd really like your input on this, I would really like your help, then they're going to let us have our experiences and have our lessons, and they're going to let us do that anyway. But, you know, there's a difference between specifically saying, I would really like guidance on this. I would really like your input. I would really like your help. Please help me. Just that one statement of, oh, or like you were saying, I'm looking for
Looking
this.
for
Just
X.
putting it out there as simple as, I'd really love just the right thing to be putting on my altar for the, to
Right.
represent this element or whatever it is. There's something about really consciously putting it out there to our
Yes.
guides and to the universe or however you look at it, in order to allow them then to go, okay, I'll answer. And then you just get to gently pay attention to what stands out.
Had an experience maybe a month or so ago. I had a bunch of students, financially times are really tough right now for people. And so I had people who wanted to take classes and but their finances are tighter. And so they had expressed that to me and I said, "Well, this is not a problem. Like, we are a community. Do you want to volunteer or something?" And people really liked that. They don't like it so much when I just gift them things, but if they can, you know, help me with poppets, or they can help me get organized, or they can volunteer at an event, so that there's that equal exchange of energy there. That's good. They like those trades. And what I was noticing is that, of course, so I could then look at the finances of my business and go, whew, not as much is coming in. So I decided to ask for abundance. Now, if your definition of abundance is I'm going to win the lottery and that's your only definition of abundance, you're not really opening it up so that lots of energies can answer you, right? So I just went abundance. And within couple of days, not only did a couple of unexpected sort of financial windfalls happen to my business where somebody was like, I want to order $300 worth of things. But I had all these people come forward who were offering me things in other ways. Do you want help with something? Do you want emotional support? Do you want to hang out so you're not so stressed? So that I was able to sort of shift my focus in terms of what I was doing so that I was getting more companionship, more wonderful opportunities to eat unusual things, more chances to sleep, better exercise. These were all forms of abundance, not just finances. But what I found is that in taking those other opportunities, it allowed me to shift how I was living enough that I had extra energy to devote to promoting my business or reaching out for new contacts and that sort of thing. So make sure when you ask, you don't necessarily limit yourself to one definition. Oh, I would really like a red car delivered to me. That's too tight for the universe. That's too tight for the unseen, right? Just put out there, I need assistance. I need companionship. I need and also vocalize, and I'm willing to trade some of my energy for this. I'm willing, if you want companionship, but then you stay in your house with the doors locked, it's really hard for those things to reach you. You need to say, I'm willing to open my door. I'm willing to reach out. I'm willing to accept what comes. And some really incredible things often come through.
Yeah. And it's opening to, like, I like the word a lot of times, allowing. Like, I'm opening to and would love to allow the flow of, abundance, or allow the flow of compassion, or whatever it is to us. Because a lot of times, if we're stuck in the idea of the energy of need, then that creates the thought of the lack, that I don't have it. But if we
Yeah.
think of it as, I'm opening to allowing this to flow to me, because it's naturally trying to get there, but maybe I've sort of put up a little bit of a barrier, like that umbrella kind of thing. It's like their blessings always raining down on us. We just need to put our umbrella down. It's like, just put away the umbrella kind of thing. If we think of it that way, that can also help. And I think that really helps with the guides kind of thing too. When we look at both ways, whatever we want to receive, if we think of it as there is just, it's not a matter of is there somebody who's willing to talk to me, but there are so many guides and there's so much help that's there that's already trying to help you, that if you just, put down the umbrella and allow those messages and the guidance and the support and the blessings and the abundance to just rain down on you, it's a lot easier. So you can really, if you've been striving and like, I'm just trying so hard to hear my guides, I'm trying to find who might be talking to me, or I'm trying to do these things, literally imagine yourself just taking your umbrella and putting it down. You're just closing it up and setting it down and going, I'm just going to sit in the abundant downpour of all of this that's coming and then see what happens.
Yeah. And I love to do a little exercise. I love me a good thrift store or a good swap meet, right? Something where there's lots of stuff kind of all jumbled in a place. And there's a particular one that a friend told me about that's maybe 45 minutes from here. And the place is packed to the rafters with random stuff, just random stuff. And tons and tons and tons of these individual little vendors who have, a 5 foot by 5 foot space that is loaded with everything from antiques to thrift store stuff, right? And there are a lot of times there are dolls in there, but a lot of times they're not able to be seen. And I love to go into a place like that, which is just chock full of residual energy, and just take a moment. And you can do this in any thrift store near you or wherever where there's a lot of stuff around. And just take a deep breath and say, which direction do I feel called to walk in? And I find the weirdest, most crazy stuff. Or sometimes I just get there and I'm like, I don't know why I'm so fascinated with this, but it's $2 and I'm going to get it and take it home and see what happens. It's a great little experiment. Yesterday, I was actually in this place with my husband. And when I first walked in, I didn't see, because you know me, I love a good doll. I didn't see any dolls anywhere. And I was like, all right. So I just start walking around the place and I'm just trying to pick up on which energies are kind of pulling me in one direction or another. And then all of a sudden, my husband, who never points out dolls to me, goes, hey, come here. And I walked over in this one direction. It was well above my line of sight. There was a doll up there in a box. And he took her down and showed her to me. And I was like, that's not the one, but there's something going on here. So I stood there for a minute, kind of holding the box and looking in the doll's eyes. And then I had this really strong inclination to go into the next room. So I hand it back to him and I say, this one's lovely, honey. Thank you for pointing it out to me. But I feel like I need to walk a little bit further. And he went, okay. And he puts the doll back up and walks on. But I had been in that room and hadn't even seen that one. So somebody who wasn't going to usually point this out to me did. And then I walk into the next room and I look down by my feet and I see a little pair of legs sticking out from this bottom shelf. And I bent down and it wasn't one, there were like 14 different dolls crammed behind this pile of other stuff on this bottom shelf. And I started taking them out one at a time and going, you're lovely, but that's not who I'm here for. You're lovely, but that's not who I'm here for. And I run into this doll, and her head and arms are on backwards.
Oh,
Like, yeah, I have her in the other room. Her legs, like literally, she's looking at her own butt. Like, I don't know what happened in the factory. Somebody was drunk that day, but this doll's feet are in one direction. Her head is on completely backwards, and the arms are clearly also facing the wrong direction from where they're stuffed, right? Like there's just everything is wrong. And I sat there going, Does she swivel? Like, I don't get it. But she would, the arms and legs, the porcelain was sewn in that way. There was no range of motion. And I thought there was just this energy coming off the doll of like, help, 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 help. And my husband walks back up and goes, "Oh my God, what happened?" And I said, "I don't know, but have you ever seen anything that looks so uncomfortable in your life?" And he was like, "No, no, no, she needs to, I'm not going to be able to stop thinking about her if we leave her here," which is a weird thing for my husband to say. And I think she was $6. So I took her up to the front and got her. And yeah, I ended up taking two others with me as well, but I held her the whole way home, and there was just this energy radiating off of her. Do I know exactly what it is? No, but I'm going to investigate it, and I bet I'm going to learn something. But in that case, I was simply allowing myself to be led around. And then I watched unusual behavior in other people in my vicinity, ended up where I believe I was supposed to have ended up. And when I picked up this little doll, and I'm like, what the heck is going on here? I believe that there's going to be a lesson because I'm going to have to take her apart and put her back together again. Right. And so I think that in doing that, I'm going to be learning something. We often spend lots of our lives taking ourselves apart and putting ourselves back together again. And there, while these journeys are hard, there's a lot to be learned each and every time we do it. So I'm wondering if there's a little part of my journey that will be reflected in hers.
Very interesting. Wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think those are such great, like, little intuitive games to play with ourselves to just go,
Mhm.
okay, yeah, which direction? Which way am I going to go here? Which way do I go here? And just let yourself be led around a space. Or I used to sell crystals and do these crystal things, and I loved laying out bowls of all these different types of crystals and then having a little card tucked under them face down so that people could go up, and you can do this, most metaphysical stores you can do this. Don't think about the types of stones or anything that you know, try to drop anything that you know about them and what they're good for, and just stand there for a moment and just say, ask to be guided to the stone that is most in alignment with, what you're needing balance in right now, or just sort of ask whatever it is, what will help me the most with something, or what is the crystal that's just best for me right now, and just kind of glance over things and see, allow yourself to just be guided to a certain stone. You can also take your hand, your non dominant hand, ideally, and just sort of run it over top of the stones and just kind of feel around and intend that you're going to feel a difference when you get to the one that's just right for you in that moment. And then if they have some sort of little card or something that says the properties of that stone, look and see what it is, because 9 times out of 10, you're going to turn that over and go, oh my gosh, I cannot believe this is exactly what I need right now. Like,
Yeah.
this has the qualities that are exactly what I'm needing. And it's such a great way to validate your intuition and just play little games with yourself like that. And then when you do and you get that hit, really highlight it and just keep using that as the proof that you are being guided, you have intuition, you're being given answers. And yeah, and I love how you also pointed out the imagine, like, let yourself pretend, because it is so important to just go ahead, because I think the reason that I'd said that of like pretend is it is the easiest way to get rid of the fear of pretending.
Yes.
And
Yes.
our creativity, our intuition, our inspirations, the same things that would go into creating the pretending are the same places that we receive these kinds of information from.
Yes.
We're drawing from the same pool of divine energy and inspiration when we pretend, you know. And
Yeah.
so if we go ahead and just say, okay, so I'm going to pretend, and that's coming from the same place anyway, it instantly just removes that barrier of what if I'm making it up. It's like, well, if I'm making it up, that was could be inspired
Right.
that inspiration maybe came from exactly the same place.
There's this stigma on the idea of pretend. And we often call things pretend when we're uncomfortable with them. So I'll give you a good example. When we see little children talking to their bears and dolls as though they're stuffed animals and their dolls are alive, we say, oh, those children are just pretending, right? But Samael has pointed out to us that when we give a doll a lot of attention and affection, it is the perfect place for an ancestor. It's the perfect thing for them to use as a vessel. They can slip in, they can talk to their child or to their descendant. They can offer the child comfort and the feeling of warmth and safety. Look at the tremendous benefit that holding dolls or stuffed animals gives to people. During COVID, there was a huge rise in doctors basically prescribing get yourself a stuffed animal adult because you don't have touch like you normally do right now. This is the closest thing, right? There are tons of scientific studies that show that having interactions with, having something to hold, like I'm sitting here holding Matilda, who's full of my own energy to ground myself right now. There are incredible benefits to that. So much so that we saw medical professionals, psychiatrists, and things recommending it during COVID. So, what other people might call pretend, you might be actually speaking to or holding the energy of one of your guides or ancestors. Because we disregard it as make believe, we are often mislabeling something that in fact will play out to show us it is not make believe at all. It's an actual thing that is happening. But you're never going to know that. Children are much closer to the divine source than we are. They've just landed here in these bodies. And as we grow up, we start to disregard the magic around us that they still see. Children are really good at picking up on energetic connections that most of us just wave away. And if you spend a lot of time with children and observe them, you'll see it. And so part of this too is, instead of going, I'm just pretending, instead say, no, I'm giving myself license to connect with the energy of my childhood self when I was more connected to the divine, when I did not yet have responsibilities and burdens heaped on me, when the world had not yet told me that I was in error and that I didn't have the power that I know I have. One of the beautiful things about children is that they don't yet know what they cannot do. And so that is the headspace that we're trying to get back into for your energetic work. And once you allow yourself to play, to commune, to set aside things that other people have told you are barriers, you are going to start to see some incredible results. And you are going to say, okay, this is now the fifth time I've pulled this card out of my Oracle deck in a row. Mathematically, the odds are not in my favor. I'm seeing something at work here. And that's when you start to see the evidence that makes you say, I now know for a fact that my entire life and energy has shifted since I started listening and watching. And I now know that I am more connected to the divine than I was 6 months ago.
Yeah, absolutely. And along the lines of the stuffed animals and things, angels can speak through them as
Oh
well
my
that way.
gosh,
Like,
yes.
our one of our children had a beloved stuffed animal that they would talk to all the time and tell us the things that they said. And then we had a session with an energy worker who was, one of my mentors, and we try not to do too much of the work ourselves when we need to reach out to someone that's not, a parent to help with certain things. And they were like, oh, absolutely. Like, yeah, the angels are absolutely talking to
Yep,
her through that. Like, that
absolutely.
it absolutely, it's just like, well, that's because I think she said something like, well, that's the same thing that, the stuffed animal had told her. And he was like, oh, absolutely. Because, the angels, your guides, your ancestors, they're using the most available source. And for a child, it's so easy for them to be like, oh, yeah, well, the stuffed giraffe just told me whatever. And they just go with it. That, yeah, returning to that is a really beautiful thing.
And if you think about it, if you have children or your own, or you've ever seen this happen in your family where, God forbid, the child leaves the favored doll or teddy bear in another state when you're on vacation, right? Notice that, I mean, children have favorite toys, but the reaction to, I can't find my bear, is so heightened compared to, oh, I can't find my block. I can't find my, for most of their other toys, you go, we'll get you another one. And they're maybe a little sad and they move on. But there is an almost hysteria that breaks out in many children when that companion, because it is an energetic companion, is separated from them. And too many adults go, oh, yeah, my child absolutely can't sleep without, Barney the bear. Oh no, once we were on vacation and we left Barney in a hotel and we had to drive back 4 hours rather than having the hotel mail it because the child would not sleep and was absolutely beside themselves. And then for some reason or another, they stopped thinking about why that would be. They don't go to the question of what would make my child so attached to this particular toy versus another. They just don't allow themselves to go there in their heads because it's bothersome. They might not have any background in energy work or ancestor work. They might not have a spiritual practice of their own. And so the idea that their child has a connection to something that they can't see is terrifying to people. But if you look at it from our perspective, what you're really seeing is a child that's letting in a guide. And that's why they're so bonded. And that's why, I mean, dolls, long before they were used as toys, were used in ritual. They were holy objects for all of the time of humanity. And over time, we've slapped a name on them like Barbie or Cabbage Patch Kid and regulated them to childhood. And they don't need to be. So, anyway,
Well,
oh my
boy, this has
goodness.
been quite the episode
Ride.
2, maybe.
My gosh, I feel like I don't even know what to I'm a little bit now. I have Matilda. I've had a bunch of tea. I'm like, you're gonna sing, and I'm gonna like, please be gentle, Samael.
Yeah, I was
I don't
thinking we're gonna go. Maybe Gabriel will be a good one for this
That would
one.
be great. Childhood,
Yes, we'll just
Gabriel.
bring in. Oh, I always think of him when we need like kind of warm fuzzies and comfort and to kind
Yeah.
of be brought back down to a peaceful place.
One of the things that I read also that I kind of skipped over because I was just aiming for the juicy bits as we were looking up Ophan, it listed Ophan's connection with unborn children as well.
Interesting. I
So
think I
I'm
saw that
really,
too.
did you see that?
Yeah,
Because
I
I
think
went through
unborn,
like
like that was
four.
like a category, I think, even of
Yeah.
like listed on in like the little AI part.
Isn't that interesting? I was on Wikipedia, and then I looked up like two or three other like angel things. And I'm taking them all with a grain of salt because it's Wikipedia and stuff like that.
Yeah, which I guess if you're thinking about if there's the gate and then creating the
A
path,
path
if Ophan is helping to create the path in
through
to it could
gates.
be through gates, but the path in for embodiment, maybe that has something to do. It's like maybe even holding them as they're waiting to then step into their bodies.
Whoa, this is a whole nother avenue.
Yeah. Which makes
And
me wonder too. I mean, when you think about the three of that, Metatron creating the gate, Ophan creating the
lace the path.
pathways, and Michael cutting the bonds and sort of deciding that, the discernment of, who and what should go where. It makes me wonder if the three of them aren't a part of conception and coming into our embodiment.
Who was it Gabriel that was the angel that told Mary Jesus was coming? Is
Yes,
it?
I think so.
It's Gabriel. I'm wondering if we went, and Samael, I am not wanting to know this right now because I just got my left arm, and my head back on straight. But I wonder if you continue down that path of Metatron, Ophan, Michael, if Gabriel maybe comes shortly after that
I would
because of
not doubt that at all. And
Gabriel's
he was
connection with
there.
children.
And he was there too. Like when we talk about Michael cutting the bonds, and I think it was like Gabriel blew his horn and opened the gates or something, like at the fall. There was something where
Oh,
Gabriel had I think it was blowing
there
his
was a
horn,
horn.
and Michael opened the space and cut the bond, but there was something with the horn. I would not doubt one bit that the next step has to do with Gabriel and his horn, because I know the horn, he said, was given to him by Metatron.
Hmm. I bet you Gabriel. I There must be like a whole because Samuel always does say there's always like a hierarchy and a structure within angelic entities. Oh,
Yeah,
this
that
is
there was like a
really
social
interesting.
structure or something.
Yeah, there's like a whole structure. That he did say it's very structured. Oh man. Okay, dare we sing? Gabriel, something grounding, something grounding. I may
All
never be the
right.
same after this podcast.
Oh my goodness. It makes sense. The whole left hand, just like remember that bracelet, that energetic bracelet that when you put it on your left, it felt like shooting pain and burning and stuff, but when you put it on your right, it's like your left side got too much of that really high vibration, like
Yep.
right hand path kind of energy. Wow, that's so fascinating to me.
Ah.
And I'm so sorry that you had to experience
No,
that.
it's fine. I was just unexpected because I hadn't had a disassociative of that level that felt like that in months and months and months and months.
Yeah.
So,
All right. So you do well with Michael and Gabriel's songs, so we're just going to know you're going to be just fine for this. And we'll save Ophan for specific specific events.
woo! Yeah.
Okay, so I am going to see what Gabriel and Michael have to bring through for us. And of course, actually, Samael, you definitely have an energy that helps to align well with Tava. So you are also very welcome to come in and join with us as well. How we
Thank you
doing?
for that. Good. Those lovely low tones. I feel like I could sleep for days. And I have, along with that peaceful song, some peaceful words from Samael. The movement of knowledge cuts its own road, and in the movement of knowledge, much is disturbed. Decisions made, energies arranged, alignments chosen and discarded. To balance activity such as this, there must be times of rest. Revelation must be followed with a pause. Time given, once the earth has been shifted under the shovel, for new plantings to root and bloom. Time for the rains to fall, and the cycles of the sun and moon to pass. A road and knowledge never comes from nothing. Retreat for a time and honor what was once here and what possibilities may now be. Balance, friends, balance. Rest is not a cessation of your work, it is part of it. I needed that part about rest is not a cessation of your work, because I often think if I'm resting, that means I'm not doing the work.
Yeah,
But
I
if we're
really
not,
like that.
yeah, it reminds me of this will be the last thing before we go. I was reading some entertainment website like a couple of years ago, and I think it was right at the peak of Outlander frenzy. And they had an interview with Sam Hewen, who plays Jamie Fraser, who is quite the weightlifter and athletic person and has a trainer that he works with for the show, right? A lot of actors do that. I think it was him and his trainer talking together in the interview. And the trainer was talking about how the hardest part of working with his client was not getting him to do the work, it was getting him to rest. That the body couldn't sustain working out 7 days a week, and that the resting periods are absolutely essential to making sure that you get the result that you want, and how hard it is for him with all of his different celebrity clients to get them to take a day off because they feel like then they're not working, then they're not doing all that they could do. And he said, you absolutely have to do it because there have to be time for the muscles to heal and knit together before you rip them apart again. And that just reminded me of that rest period so important if you want to get where you're going.
Yeah, and when we think about it in terms of integration, that's the time when we integrate. I love that same analogy of like with the muscles, when we're expanding and we're expanding and we're expanding and with all the working out, you're tearing apart those muscle fibers so that they can be put back together in a new way. But if you don't stop and rest, that's when they knit back together, that's when they rebuild. It's the same energetically for us. When we rest is when we integrate, when we can weave the things back together in a new way. And without it, we're just constantly being torn open. We're just be getting blown open more and more without the time to weave everything together in a new way.
Yeah.
That's
Yep.
beautiful.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It has been a wild ride.
Absolutely. And
Thank you.
so we hope you enjoy your rest and have ways where you can both open and listen and receive and balance that with the necessary work of rest.
And thank you for having attended my nervous breakdown. We'll see you soon.